Hi, it's Mrs. Fawcett and Lulu here, and we're back to read some more of The Wild Robot Escapes. Chapter 33, The Autumn. Autumn colors were sweeping across farm country. The lush greens of summer faded into reds and browns. Crops were harvested, leaves fell away, and the landscape turned stark and gray. On Hilltop Farm, the cows were grazing on the remaining of the pasture grasses, while the herding machine hovered nearby. The farm machine was preparing the fields for winter. The drone circled the farm several times a day, but there was less to report in autumn. Although Jaya and Jad were busy with school, they always made time for Roz. The children never grew tired of listening to the robot's stories, and they never grew tired of sharing their own. The bees and the mice and the deer and the frogs and the raccoons and the squirrels and the snakes were all getting ready for cold weather. So too were the birds. The owls spruced up their nests, the crows stockpiled acorns. The swallows were still swooping over the farmlands, but they would soon be leaving for winter, and any day now, other migratory birds would begin passing through on their long journey south. Chapter 34, The Delighted Geese. A flock of geese had just landed at Hilltop Farm. It was the first flock of the autumn migration. The geese floated on the pond, cleaning their feathers and nibbling on weeds, but they all stopped what they were doing when Roz waved and said hello. The robot never forgot a face, and she was certain she didn't know any of these geese, but they seemed to know her. Even before she introduced herself, the lead goose squawked, "Is your name Roz?" The robot stared at the goose. "Yes, it is." "And you speak animal language?" The answer was obvious, but Roz politely said, "Yes, I can speak animal language." "Do you by chance have a goose who's your son?" "I do," said Roz. "His name is Brightbill." At that, a voice blurted out, "The stories are true!" And suddenly the flock was smiling and fluttering over to the robot. When the commotion settled down, the leader explained, "All along our migration, we've heard rumors about a robot who can speak with animals, who has a goose for a son, and who is trapped on a farm. That sounds ridiculous, but here you are." The flock was absolutely delighted to meet our robot. They lounged around the pond for a couple of days, chatting with Roz whenever she came by, and they continued flying south to their wintering grounds. Another flock of these geese arrived, and the same thing happened all over again. Roz welcomed them. They were delighted to meet the legendary robot, and then the flock continued south. Then it happened again and again. Before long, the coming and going of delighted geese was just another part of the robot's autumn routine. Struggling behind the others, as usual, was Wingtip's flock. When Roz saw them splashing into the pond, she felt something like hope that they might have news of her son. Sadly, the geese had no news to report. And as the flock took off and left Roz behind, she began to question whether she'd ever see Brightbill again. Chapter 35, The Memories. Roz still dreamed of escaping, of going home, of reuniting with her son. But her dreams were starting to feel impossible. She was losing hope. Was it time for the robot to accept her new life and forget her old one? Forget. Roz was troubled by this word. You see, her computer brain remembered every detail of her life on the island, and it hurt to think back and think that she might never be back there. However, the robot could always forget. She could erase her old memories. It would be like they never happened. The heaviness she now felt would vanish. But without her memories, who would she be? No, Roz wanted to remember her old life, which was good, because someone from her old life was about to appear. Chapter 36, The Unusual Flock. Another flock of geese was approaching the farm, but this flock was unusual. It wasn't flying south like the others. It was flying north in a perfect V formation, and it was led by a young, graceful goose. The flock flew through once around the farm buildings and then delicately touched down in the barnyard. The leader whispered some words to the others, and then he fluttered up through the barn doors. The cows looked up from their stalls as the goose perched himself on a rail near the middle of the barn. Then the goose cleared his throat, shook his tail feathers, and announced to the herd, "I am looking for a robot named Roz. I am Bright Bill, her son." Chapter 37, The Reunion. Something was wrong with the cows. Their excited moos echoed out from the barn and across the farm. Roz sent the milk truck away for the evening deliveries and hurried off to see what the ruckus was about. When she stepped into the barn, she found the entire herd crowded together. As the robot started pushing her way through, the cows turned to her and smiled. And then Roz saw him, her beloved son, Bright Bill. As you know, reader, robots don't feel emotions, not the way animals do. But in that moment, in that barn, nobody had any doubt how Roz felt. She rushed forward and scooped her son into her arms. "Bright Bill," she cried, "is it really you?" "It is really me," Bright Bill nuzzled his mother's face. "But how did you find me?" said Roz. "My, you're famous. You were all anyone could talk about at the wintering grounds." It started with flocks of geese that stopped here on their migrations. They shared their story about you with everyone they met. Your story spread flock to flock, from north to south, from east to west. Eventually, your story made its way to me. I took off as soon as I heard where you were. I didn't even tell the others. "But we caught up to him," Loud Wing said, fluttering by the herd and gently landing on the cow's back. "Bright Bill wasn't the only one who wanted to see you, Roz." The rest of the flock appeared, and the robot found herself surrounded by her old friends and family. Squawking and mooing and laughing and cheering filled the barn. But then came a loud, clear voice that only the robot understood. "Roz, what are you doing?" The animals hushed. Roz slowly turned around, and there were Jaya and Jad standing in the doorway. The children had seen everything. Chapter 38, The Truth. The children could be very sneaky. And when Jaya and Jad heard the ruckus coming from the barn, they silently snuck over to investigate. Now they were staring at a very strange scene indeed. Roz was standing in the middle of the barn, surrounded by the entire herd of cows. For some reason, the flock of geese was there, and one of the geese was being cradled in the robot's arms. But what most confused the children were the wild animal noises Roz had been making. The thing is, the children aren't just sneaky, they're also smart. And it didn't take long for Jay and Jad to make sense of that strange scene. Those stories Roz told us about the robot on the island, said Jad to his sister, they were all about her. That goose in Roz's arms, said Jaya to her brother, that must be her son. All of Roz's stories came flooding back to the children. The robot, the island, the wild animals, the adventures. Those stories seemed so fanciful, but could they really be true? You are correct, children, said the robot. The stories are about me, with a hint of sadness in her voice. There were so many times I wanted to tell you the truth about my past, but I was afraid the truth might frighten you. The robot motioned to the goose in her arms. This is my son. His name is Brightbill. Reader, there's another important quality that children possess. In addition to being sneaky and smart, they're also compassionate. Children care about others and about the world, and as Jaya and Jad gazed at Roz and Brightbill, their little hearts were full of compassion. Please do not tell your father about me, said Roz. To him, I am a machine. If he learns the truth, he will send me back to the robot factory and I will be destroyed. But you must do what you feel is right. My life is in your hands. The children looked at each other and smiled. Don't worry, Roz, said Jaya. Your secret is safe with us. Chapter 39, The Allies. Jay and Jad would do anything to have their own mother back. So they understood how happy Brightbill and Roz must have felt at that moment. But they also understood that this happy moment couldn't last forever. Brightbill couldn't live on the farm, and Roz couldn't be her true self around their father. Life seemed so unfair. The children knew what needed to happen. Roz, you need to go home, said Jaya. You need to be with your family and friends on your island, said Jad. I wish I could go home, but your father would never allow it, said Roz. Just run away, said the girl. I ran away once. It was easy. But then I started feeling hungry, so I came home and made myself a sandwich. Running away might be easy for you, but not for me, said Roz. Your father can track my movements. If he sees me trying to escape, he will think I'm defective and he will send me to be destroyed. An uncomfortable question popped into Jaya's mind. Roz, don't take this the wrong way, she began. But is it possible you are defective? Don't say that, Jaya, said her brother. No, it's okay, said the robot. I have asked myself that same question. I do not feel defective. I feel different. Is being different the same as being defective? You saved my life, and now I'm going to save yours, said Jad, with a look of determination in his eyes. I know you can only access farming information, Roz, so let us handle the research. There has to be a way for you to safely escape, but we need to figure out a plan. The robot exchanged a few animal sounds with her son, and then she said to the children, Brightbill must soon lead his flock back to their wintering grounds. However, he can return here in the spring. The boy nodded slowly. We should have you ready by then. The girl looked concerned. Roz, even if you safely escape from the farm, how will you get all the way home to your island? Leave that to Bright Bill and me, said the robot. Together we will find our way home. I have faith in the two of us, and I have faith in you. Chapter 40, Instincts. The next few days were a blur. Roz rushed through her daily tasks so she could have more time with the flock. The geese talked about Chit-Chat the squirrel and the beaver family and the other animals from the island. Roz talked about the robot factory and the Sharifs and life on the farm. But the geese were always aware of their instincts, calling them back to the warm wintering grounds. And when they awoke one morning to find the countryside dusted with snow, they knew it was time to go. By some miracle, Roz and Bright Bill had been reunited, and now they had to say goodbye all over again. The flock stood in the pasture with Roz as the children and herd looked on. Bright Bill fluttered up to his mother's shoulder and wrapped his wings around her face. I'll return in the spring, said the goose, and then you and I will find our way home. Please be careful, said the robot. I don't want to lose you again. We'll keep your son out of trouble, squawked Loudwing with a smile. The geese waved goodbye to Roz and their new farm friends. Then Bright Bill shook his tail feathers, beat his wings, and led the flock to the sky. Chapter 41, The Winter. When Roz lived on the island, winter had seemed like a long, cruel blizzard. On Hilltop Farm, winter wasn't quite so harsh. The temperatures fell, but then rose. Storms came and went. Snow piled up and then melted away. Roz spent winter preparing the farm for spring. She wanted everything to be perfect when she left. She turned up the machines. She made fertilizer from old grass clippings and manure. She planned which crops would be seeded in which fields, and she carefully looked over the herd, making sure each cow was happy and healthy. She made long lists of supplies, and then Mr. Sharif placed big orders. The herding machine hauled bales of hay into the pasture, and the cows gathered around to eat, steam puffing from their mouths. Some of the cows were dried off and wouldn't be milked again until after the calving season. Others went into the milking parlor twice a day as usual. Bottles were filled, boxes were loaded. The milk truck rolled away on its next delivery run. No matter the season, the dairy farm kept chugging along. Every day after school, Jaya and Jad ran to their bedrooms and got right to their homework. And when their homework was finished, their secret studies began. They researched the design and construction and maintenance of Roz and robots, hoping to discover some way for Roz to safely escape. The information wasn't easy to find, but the children were persistent. And after weeks of work, they finally found what they were searching for.